Hey, I hope your day's going great. It's one song that I just love playing. I don't mind stealing bread from the mouths of decadence, but I can't feed on the powerless. My cup's already overfilled. Yeah, but it's on the table, the fire's cooking, and they're farming babies, the slaves are working. Blood is on the table, the mouths are choking, and I'm going hungry. It's about time we're out actually in the greenhouse, and I'm going to do a quick video today about how to transplant tomatoes, or at least how I transplant tomatoes. What I'm doing right now is I'm planting my tomatoes in my greenhouse about 18 inches apart. I want to make sure I have enough room for them once they start growing all their leaves and they start growing up, that I can get some airflow in here, and that kind of helps with the spread of fungus and disease, and you don't want that on your leaves because that will kill the tomato plant, or if it doesn't kill it, it will at least inhibit growth of your tomatoes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the camera down and kind of show you how we're going to plant this. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to dig a hole. It's about 18 inches away from the other tomato plant right here. And I'm going to dig it fairly deep. As you can see, I'm going to dig it nice and deep, because what we're going to do is I'm going to put the tomato plant further down in than you would expect. Okay, so looking at our tomato plant, you see all those leaves down at the bottom. I'm going to actually take those leaves off. So here we go. I'll show you. Pop that leaf off. These are the cotyledons. Here are the first true leaves. I'm going to pop all these off all the way up to here. Okay, and I'm going to plant this whole tomato plant in the ground. Pop it off. Ooh, my roots are looking good. So watch how deep I plant this. All right, what that's going to do is it's going to be able to establish roots higher up. It's going to make the plant a little bit stronger. Nice deep root system is how you like your tomatoes. So you can see how I planted all the other ones going down. They're all about 18 inches apart. Normally I trellis tomato plants up, and you'll see I'll talk about the trellising system as we get further on in the season. I'm not going to trellis them up yet because they don't need to be trellised up yet. They're just going to grow. I'm going to let them grow up a little bit taller before I do that. Okay, and then we're going to talk about my method in the greenhouse and why I use it for tomatoes. Okay, so let's watch that one more time with the next tomato that I'm going to plant. The next one, I believe, is an Amana orange. I'm really excited about planting these. Okay. Nice and deep. By the way, this is the type of soil you get when you do not till. Nice soil ready to be planted in. All kinds of organisms. Just drop that in there. Now, one other thing to keep in mind when you're transplanting your plants from, if you're starting your plants from seed and they've been inside or they've been protected, another thing for you to think about, if you're planting outside, you're going to need to make sure that you harden them off a little bit. And for those of you that don't know what that means, you're gonna need to have them, you're gonna need to bring them outside slowly for a couple days just to make sure that they're ready to hit that real hardcore sunshine. Now, these tomato plants have been in my greenhouse, my nursery greenhouse, almost since they've been growing. So they're good to go. They're ready for this hot sun. They're ready for the heat and the wind. They've had a fan on them almost the entire time, so they're ready for a lot of that stuff. So I've kind of already did the hardening off process for these tomatoes. All right, my last two. I got two more to go, and these are my Cherokee purples. All right, let's do this. Okay, there we go. The last one. We got one more Cherokee purple to do right here at the end. All 9 planted nice and securely in the ground in the greenhouse. Now, real quick, I'm going to talk about some things that I've done in the past that have been mistakes. And from what I've read, these are common mistakes that people often make when they're planting tomatoes. Planting tomatoes anywhere. First things first, you need to know the difference between you need to know what type of tomato plant you're planting. The majority of tomato plants out there are meant to vine. They're meant to vine along the ground and create a root system along the ground and grow along the ground. So these types are called indeterminate tomatoes, and the majority of tomato plants are indeterminates. Okay, so every tomato plant I grow is an indeterminate, and what that means is they're going to continue to grow up, always up. They'll grow out as well. Oh man, 30 degrees difference out here. So they'll continue to vine. If you do it correctly, you're going to have them vine. They can grow 20 feet. So that's what an indeterminate tomato is. Indeterminate means that will continue to grow and continue to grow until there's not enough sunlight or not enough warm air or water. So the majority of the tomatoes I'm growing, so the Cherokee purples, Amana orange, cherry tomatoes, and I'm also growing brandywines. They're all indeterminate. They're going to continue to grow, and by the time the end of the season comes, I'll show you how long my tomato vines are in there. They're usually about 20 feet. I think last year they were about 18 or 20 feet, so they continue to grow, and the method I use, the drop and lean method, will allow them to continue to grow. The other type of tomato you can get is a determinate, and these are the type of tomatoes like bush out. Some do this, but I'm not a big fan of the bushing determinate tomatoes because you basically get one big yield out of them and it stops growing and it stops producing fruit. So I like the indeterminate because they just continue to produce fruit, and here in the greenhouse they'll continue to produce fruit until October, November. So basically have tomatoes from the end of June to November. It's a long time to get tomatoes. Biggest mistake that I've made or I've seen other people make when growing tomatoes is planting them too close together. When any plant is planted too close to another plant, they're going to be fighting over nutrients, fighting over water. Anything that it needs to grow, it's going to be fighting over. If it has a lot of foliage and it's next to a lot of other plants, it's going to be fighting over sunlight too. So I don't ever, in the past I've planted tomatoes very close together. Not a good idea. What ended up happening was not enough airflow got to them, and they end up getting blight, early blight. They get fungus. They start getting all these diseases because they're too close to each other, and especially if one tomato plant leaf is touching another, then it's going to pass that disease on to the other. This happens with cucumbers as well, but right now we're just talking about tomatoes. So I try to make sure they're at least 18 inches apart. One year I planted about 12 inches and it was a big mistake. So at least 18 inches apart is the good rule of thumb that I like to go by. Another mistake I've made with planting tomatoes is planting them in an area that gets very little sun. If you plant your tomatoes in a shaded area in your yard, you might, the tomato plant will grow, but you're not going to get a lot of fruit, especially if you try to grow a large variety. If you try to grow brandywines or some kind of beefsteak tomato and it doesn't have a lot of sunshine, you're in an area that doesn't give you a lot of sun, then you are not going to get many tomatoes. Okay. Another piece of advice, just from my experience at growing tomatoes, is I would recommend, especially if you've never grown tomatoes before and you want to give it a shot and you don't have an area with a lot of sun like I do. I luckily, my back of my house faces south and I get almost all the southern sun. I mean, I'm still getting sun everywhere except for a few spots in my earth garden right now. And it's later on in the day, so it's around 4 or something. It's really important to get that morning sun and the evening sun. So my recommendation would be to start with a cherry tomato, something that's going to give you a lot of fruit, because they will start faster, you will get more, and they will keep producing. You're gonna, if you're just a regular homeowner and you want to grow tomatoes and you grow 4 or 5 indeterminate cherry tomato, most cherry tomatoes are indeterminates. You grow 4 or 5 indeterminate cherry tomato plants, you're gonna have so many cherry tomatoes you're not gonna know what to do with, especially if it's in full sun. So I mean, that's one of those things that it's just, I mean, you know, and this advice I'm giving you right now is just advice from things that I've learned. It's not, I mean, it's just not like definitely a rule. It's stuff that mistakes that I've made. And then the last but not least, when you plant your tomatoes outside, you are relying upon nature. And when you do that, sometimes if you have a summer that gives you rain all summer, your tomatoes are done. Okay. If tomatoes have too much water, they produce tomatoes, but the tomatoes will pop out, they will split, you'll get more disease. There's a lot of things that happen when tomato plants are overwatered. One thing I find, when tomato plants get water on their leaves and the water is allowed to stay on their leaves, that's when disease happens. So what I do is, a lot of the tomatoes I do, and the last year I did solely tomatoes in my greenhouse, is I bottom water them, so I drip irrigate my tomatoes. Tomatoes work extremely well with drip irrigation, so you're not watering the actual leaves on the tomato plant. Okay guys, once again, this is just some advice that I have for tomatoes, because it's about that time of year. Start putting them in the ground, and if you have any questions, please ask them in the comment section. And I hope you enjoyed the video. All right guys, bye.